people of the internet, it's Amanda, and for today's video, I'm here to talk about my rewatch of the Kurosagi 2006 TV series. Now, literally, I think the last time that I've seen this drama was more than a decade ago. I never really rewatched it after I've seen it for the first time, and the only reason why I'm rewatching it now is because of anticipation for the 2022 version, even if they've made it clear that the 2020 version isn't exactly like a reboot or a sequel or anything like that. It's gonna be its like own new thing, you know? So yeah, but of course I have to like rewatch to refresh my memory of characters, storylines, all of the other things. I've seen the movie version a lot more recently because that one was being aired on cable TV just I think over a year ago or 2 years ago. So that one's still a little bit fresh on my memory, but the TV series version, even if I remember some parts of it, it's just completely like blocked out. And so today's video. Now, before I get into a completely objective review or just sharing my opinions and thoughts about that particular series, now that I've rewatched it on a 2022 perspective, I have to say that, and I think I've talked about this in previous videos before, I'm not exactly the biggest fan of Yamashita Tomohisa or Yamapi. I mean, I've had a phase where I really enjoyed some of his projects. I think Proposal Day Sakasan is definitely one of my favorite early J-dramas. Daite Señorita, which is the OST for Kurosagi 2006, as well as the movie, if I remember correctly, is also a bop, and that's a solo song of his. But I'm just not the biggest fan of him in the acting department. I do feel like he definitely got a lot of like really good projects and that he was really popular at the time, and I know that he has a lot of fans and stuff like that. It's just that, yeah, aside from like the name and the presence and just his popularity, I'm not exactly the biggest fan of his acting, and I'll be talking a lot about that in terms of how I view this particular drama. So yeah. With that said, let's talk about the positives first. So in terms of the writing, I've always loved TBS dramas. I do feel like they have some of the best in terms of writing, storytelling, and stuff like that. And of course, they're really good in terms of creating parts of certain series that they've already done in previous years. So for example, with Hana Yoridango, they did such a good job in terms of Hana Noche Hare, where it's a sequel, but not exactly something that couldn't stand on its own. And I really love the writing, how they translated it into something that fits a more current audience and atmosphere and anything like that. Same with Dragon Sakura 2. So I haven't seen Dragon Sakura 1, which also stars Yamashita Tomohisa, because as I mentioned earlier, not exactly the biggest fan of his. So I haven't seen that version, and I didn't really like put in the effort to see that one, but I've seen Dragon Sakura 2 because of Takahashi Kaito from King and Prince, and I love that one and I appreciated that one a lot, even if again I have no particular knowledge of the first installment that aired almost a decade ago. So TBS definitely has this flair in modernizing or in tweaking the narratives that are popular almost decades or more than decades ago and making it fresh, and I really like that. And at the same time, like even just their standalone dramas in general are really good as well. Writing wise, directing, there's just something about it that I absolutely really love as a J-drama fan. And so for the Kurosagi 2006 version, I have to say that in terms of writing, in terms of like how each episode was created, I really loved it. I really enjoyed it, and I was really immersed with, you know, just the cases and how they created like a storyline for each episode from start to finish. So yeah, I mentioned this before, I love Horika Tamaki. There was a phase in my life where I would show her picture to hairdressers and I would copy her hairstyle, even if I'm nowhere as cute as her, especially during my teen years, but I absolutely love her. I do have, like, I did notice some stuff about her character as Tsurara in this rewatch that I was so blind to before, especially because I loved her back then and everything, and I think that really kind of like shielded me from creating more informed opinions about her performance in this drama. But overall, I do feel like she's a really, like, she adds this level of vulnerability to the character that is this other side to Tsurara that I really liked as well. But in terms of the supporting cast, I really have to give it to Yamazaki Tomo, who played Katsuragi. If you don't know, so Katsuragi is the fixer of the swindlers in the narrative, and they are all sort of connected to him in some way, their backstories, and he's this person who gives information not just to Kurosagi as a character, but to other swindlers as well. So he's definitely like this character that he's neither like the complete villain nor a complete ally in the story, and he's very complex, and I really like his characterization. And I do feel like Yamazaki-san did a really good job in terms of creating that kind of like shrewd but then at the same time quirky type of character that makes him really interesting. That said, let's talk about Yamapi as Kurosagi. Now, again, as I mentioned, I do feel like he's the type of actor who doesn't really disappear into the role, and I feel like that's what happened with this series, because Kurosagi has to blend in or to play different roles and to have these little nuances, especially when he's doing disguises for his role. But for me, I just see him, or parts of him that he's already played in other dramas that I've seen him in. So whenever he's acting a little bit quirky or anything like that, or a little bit more jollier than his usual quote-unquote dark side, I see his Akira from Nobutawa produce. Or whenever he's, I don't know, like, I just couldn't grasp the darkness of the character entirely through his performance. And I feel like, again, I love the script of this particular series. It's just that maybe because the reference material is still not finished at the time, because the manga was still ongoing, but it, like, the overarching story of Kurosaki and why he's doing his revenge or anything like that, it wasn't wrapped up. And they could have taken creative liberties with it just to create some sort of like closure, but it just felt like, all these things, it just became case of the week rather than, a case of the week plus something in the background that's happening for him to get this like character thing going on, like the very core of why he's doing what he's doing in the first place. And I wish they could have done that, especially since in the movie, it's also the same thing. Like, they didn't have any clear conclusion in the film as well. So yeah. And yeah, I just wasn't able to, like, watching the cases, it's fun, like how he's going to swindle the other characters, etc. But I honestly didn't feel the burden of his past in his portrayal. And yeah, and especially like, even if there's this one particular scene that I absolutely don't like, and that is whenever they're showing him screaming "Oto-san" to the camera, because whenever he's remembering what happened to his family in the past, I felt like Yamapi delivered that line so poorly. And I understand that it's just one word, it's just him calling out to his father, but it was such a like a close shot frame. It should be like a very traumatic experience for him. He should be ridden with like fear or anything like that. But and I'm so sorry to his fans or anything, but there's just really something about it that I just couldn't feel. Believability in terms of how he's delivering it, actually. just wasn't there, and I was pretty disappointed because again, the supporting cast, I was really thankful to how the supporting cast were able to like really make the viewing experience enjoyable, because I remember like needing to pause after a scene or so because I was just so not feeling a certain scene that he was delivering. And yeah, and again, yeah, definitely I just didn't enjoy the performance, and to think that he's the main character, it was just very lacking for me. And I was really happy that the storytelling of TBS and the writers and the direction really salvaged like the vibe of the cases and stuff, but Yamapi at the center of it just wasn't effective for me. And yeah, another thing is for Tsurara's character with Horikotamaki, right? Again, as I mentioned earlier, she provided this nice vulnerability to the character, but now looking back at it, because her character is supposedly this contrast that would cause an emotional challenge to Kurosagi, because she's supposed to be the cause of this emotional compromise in him, you know. But here it just looked like she was just pining over him, and it was so unclear. I'm not particularly sure if it's because they don't want to like really dabble into like the romance department of it, or is it because, as I mentioned before, there was just something about Yamapi's performance that lacked nuances that really missed out on the idea that there is like he is in a way being affected by Tsurara in a way or whatever. But I don't know, it just felt like Tsurara's character, even if you remove her from the story, it can work. Which makes me feel so sad because, as I mentioned again, I really love Horikotamaki's character. It's just that I feel like, you know, the depiction of Tsurara was just, it was meant to add more to the story. It was meant to reflect that you know, there's an emotional struggle in her because she wants to be a prosecutor, but then she falls in love with this swindler for swindlers. And then for Kurosaki, he finally finds someone who cares for him, who knows his story, but somehow he feels some sort of like attachment to her, but he couldn't really act on it, and because of the circumstances that's happening. And it's shown that, you know, in the series, or implied in the series, that he was kind of worried for her, especially when Katsuragi was trying to like get closer, use Tsurara as a pawn. But it just felt very surface level in this particular adaptation, and I just wish that, you know, they could make do with like Tsurara in the story, given how everything is delivered. There was no friction, there was no emotional, like there was not enough angst in a way in their relationship for me to see the value in why they needed to be connected in the first place. So there's also that. Speaking of relationships, I also hated Yukari's character a lot. Like, I understand it was such a thing, especially back in the 2010s, where the whole love triangle thing. I just hate the fact that it was established earlier on that Tsurara and Yukari are friends, but then just because Yukari started liking Kurosaki, she started to become an asshole towards Tsurara, and it was such like, it's so high school, it's so juvenile. I hated it. I felt like it really added nothing. Like, that entire thing just simply added nothing, other than the fact that, you know, she kept on like egging Tsurara into like, just give up on him because you two have very different values, blah blah, whereas I can support him even if he's doing all these bad things. And I get it, and I feel like they could just establish that tension between Kurosaki and Tsurara without Yukari there, because Yukari's character is just so annoying to me. But yeah, but overall, like, it is a very enjoyable and well-written drama. I think the main issue that we really have is in terms of the portrayal of Kurosaki as a character, and simply because, again, as I mentioned, they didn't really conclude it in a way that his intentions and his motivations to like why he's doing what he's doing wasn't exactly wrapped up in the drama as well. And I understand that, and I also think that because of that, it amplified this idea of just Kurosaki not showing enough angst or connection to his past while he's doing what he's doing. Because again, it just felt like a case of the week kind of thing for me, and there was just not enough emotional grip in terms of, you know, the backstory and how it's affecting his operations, you know. And I wish that they could have just banked on the idea more of you know, he Kurosaki wants someone to stop him because he couldn't stop himself. And I wish they could have banked on that to really strengthen the relationship between him and Tsurara. And at the same time, like, you know, there's this entire thing of them talking about, you know, how it is, like, if you solve a particular case and then your entire life built on that and then it's finally over. So what's in it for you? And that's probably the reason why he doesn't want to be stopped anymore, is because after that, would it be satisfying enough for him to, like, there's this constant chase, the idea of the constant chase to just keep you from going and motivating you for you know, like all of those things. They could have just anything. And I feel like, again, even if they didn't conclude the drama in a way, if I just felt that, you know, that emotional moment, like the nuances in the acting, probably, I don't know, like it could have been more effective. But yeah, again, as I mentioned, even the moments where Kurosaki was being emotional, the flashbacks, again, I just have to mention it over and over. I really hate that tight shot of him just screaming that line without any touch of feeling or emotion or fear or anything. I don't know what that scene was even supposed to like evoke to the audience, because it definitely felt flat to me. But yeah, I absolutely enjoyed it. Even if I have so many complaints, I actually enjoyed it. It's just that which is ironic, because every time Kurosaki is in the scene doing things that I feel like should have had a bigger impact, I just didn't feel it. So yeah, I enjoyed the parts where, you know, they were like putting in the pawn pieces into the game and whatever, and him explaining stuff. But exposition isn't exactly what makes a story, you know? Like, exposition is there for me to understand the story, and it served its purpose in a way, but the nuances that go into exposition and dialogue definitely what makes a viewing experience holistic, in my opinion. And I just didn't get that from the more emotional parts, or the more like gripping parts of the narrative, which should have been, I guess, the intention of some of the scenes in the series. Enjoyed the fact that there are some cases in Kurosagi 2006 that are very outdated for today's time, but there are also some that are still very much applicable. And I think it's the relatability of the plot that is also one of the most intriguing things about it. So yeah. Now, with that said, so I know that some of you guys have talked about, you know, liking the series before in my previous video. So let's talk it out down in the comments below. Thoughts, opinions, blah, blah. As usual, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to my channel and you would want to hear more from me, please hit subscribe. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you again soon in a new one.